Hello, welcome back. I'm Jeff Byers. This is Module 6, and this is Part 3, where we've already baked the maps in Part 2, and now we're moving on to creating the textures, and then we need to export. But I wanted to kind of take you through some of the texturing that I actually created, and this is really up to you, how you want to go about creating your textures. It's really, I really want you to have artistic freedom with this, and so, but I just wanted to show you what I ended up with and how it looks in Substance Painter. So you can see how I ended up doing the paint and the door. I'll just take you kind of through what they look like. I ended up doing kind of a fabric wall, kind of interesting, you know. Let's see if how close I can get up to it so you guys can see what it looks like. So it's got texture on it, and it looks nice close up. Okay, I'm not sure if I really like that bumpy painted look. I might pull that back a little bit. We'll see how it looks in Maya and from a distance. I did want to have a nice textured look, and the floor I think turned out nice, except for this crappy piece right here. But you know, it might be a happy mistake. I don't know. If it isn't, I'll get rid of it. The problem with that kind of thing is that when it repeats, it looks bad. So anyway, that's you know, something, some stuff you find out that needs to be done, redone. You go back and you make that change to it. Okay, so those are things you have to keep in mind when you are texturing, that you might have to go back and forth between Maya and Substance Painter and back and forth until you get it right. Alright, so with that said, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, and if you're happy with that, one of the things that I think is crucial in how you view your work, and let me give you an example. I like to view my work in studio lighting, okay? So that gives me the truest, most neutral lighting, so you can see what the textures really look like. So you're not surprised when you bring them back into Maya, because I've had a lot of students go, you know what, my textures don't look anything like what they do in Substance Painter. I really chose that texture because it looked fantastic, Substance Painter. Let me tell you why that happened. Is because in the display settings, okay, that's this little icon here, in your environment map, it might be something that started like this. Look how different that looks. It's because that particular map is very warm, okay? Alright, so it really has to do with the kind of map, and this will have a green tint to it. It makes your textures look different. I chose Studio 2. This gives me the most neutral look, and so that gives me a really natural what the textures actually look like. That's why I use studio lighting a lot when I'm actually texturing and when I'm showing off my work. Okay? Now, if I put this in an environment, it's going to look totally different because I'm going to have more warm light, more warm tones. I might have some color in the lighting itself. And that's okay when you put it into a scene, but when you're showing your work off, it's good to show it in the best light, which is studio lighting. Okay? Alright, that's my personal preference. And I think you guys kind of get that idea. You'll know that will really be a good thing when you're trying to show off your work or get it graded, because having something like this doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It just looks very green toned. You know, it's got a lot of green in it, right? But if you had this in a scene in a forest, right? This piece was in that environment, then that's okay. You're outdoors, and that's a good environment. But since we're indoors, this is studio is what I usually go with. Just kind of give you a heads up on that. So we need to save this stuff out. So what you want to do is you want to go to File, Export Textures, And we need to make sure that our configuration, you can see all of our textiles or our UDOMs are showing. And we want a PBR metal rough, and we need to tell it where to go. So you need to click on that bar and tell it where you want to save it. And hopefully you're saving it in a spot. Well, you should be saving it in your documents, right? Under Maya and under projects, and then my module 5, and you should be saving it in your source images folder. Should all be in there. Okay, that's where I'm going to save mine. Okay, that's important, right? So it'll pull from those directly. So now configuration, this is super important. We need Arnold 5 UDOM AI standard surface, and that's what we're using. Okay, so that's important. You don't have to do anything else. Okay, go back to export. And under dilation, I usually go no padding pass through. Okay, that way it saturates the whole entire tile, the UDOM tile, so you won't have any problems later. Right? PNG, yeah, why not? Uncompressed. All right. If you're worried about bogging your computer down, you can use JPEG, but I choose PNG. And if you do choose PNG and you have problems later trying to get it to show up, that could be the reason you might have to go back and bake, right? So you want to go ahead and do the export, and this might take a while, so I'm going to go ahead and select it and then pause. Okay, she's all finished, and let's go ahead and click OK. We're good. So now you've got all those exported. So next thing you're going to need to do is go to File and make sure you save your scene, save as, and you're going to want to save it whatever and wherever you want it. So I've got up to 3. I'm going to do this as 4 because I got different lighting in here. Save it. Give it a chance to save. Don't click anywhere. If you start clicking, you might lock it up and then you lose everything. Okay, so don't go crazy clicking and trying, because it doesn't save automatically. It has to save all those maps too, and that saves everything. So give it a chance before you click on anything in the viewport. Okay. All right. I'm going to pause the video and get into Maya and get you started there. Okay. Wow, back in Maya, and now the fun part begins. Now, you will see something different. I hit the 5 key, so I want you guys to just hit the 5 key. Okay, hit the 5 key, because we're not going to be able to see the textures no matter what. No matter what happens, we're not going to see those textures. UDOM tiles and PBR textures, they're still trying to work out the bugs, and we're kind of going above and beyond the texturing that normal people do, and for just basically next gen games. So PBR, it's still hard to see. Okay, so some video cards display it okay, some don't. Mine kind of does okay, and I've got an NVIDIA 1080 Ti. It's not the newest version. Maybe I need to update my drivers, and that's what maybe you need to do too. But let me show you what I did. I found the object, one of the objects that had all 8 materials, okay, on it, okay, and I couldn't get the floor. Obviously, the floor has to be done by itself. But if you do one of these, it will carry over. Okay, so ignore the fact that there's an arrow here. Usually it just shows like a checkerboard. Okay, that basically means where you need to put your textures. So what you want to do is select one of those guys, and you need to go click on the arrow over here to move over until you see your texture. So this one has the off-white texture, the burnt orange texture, the medium gray texture, and so on and so forth. The blue screen, the dark gray, the pipes, all of this stuff is in here. So what we need to do now is we need to connect the correct textures to the color channels. So we've got, let's talk about that really quick. The channels that I'm using is color, metalness, roughness, and we scroll down under geometry, we've got bump mapping. Okay? Those are the 4 that we need to really concentrate on. And we need to do it for every single slot. So when I say a slot, it's a node. It's a material node. So the off-white is this texture here, the burnt orange, okay, medium gray, and so I have to kind of go back to this. This really comes into handy because my organizational skills come in play now that I've organized everything into UDIM tiles, and here they are. And they correspond with what I have here. Off-white. Oh, where's that tile? Off-white. 17 or 18. Doesn't matter which one. I'm going to pick the one that's closest. So basically, if I'm going to do an off-white on any of these, okay, I'm going to pick 17. 10, 17. Okay? So let me give you an idea how it works. Okay, so we're going to do this one. It doesn't matter which one it is. It all works. Okay? So if I go in here and I click on that guy, and I'm going to start with off-white. Okay? So off-white, that's the first one. Okay? I'm going to go into the color channel, click on the color channel, and go make sure filter type is off, and the base color, okay? Base color is, I go in there and I find it. So base color for off-white, again, when we look at this, off-white is 1017. Okay? So now I'm going to go down, scroll down to 1017. Okay, right? 1017. It's the base color, it says right there. Click on it and click open. Okay? And then you're going to click on UV tiling mode to be UDIM Mari. You're going to click and it says 19 tiles found. That's a good sign. Yours might say something different. Okay? So I'm going to click on generate, and we're going to color space is sRGB. Okay? And then alpha luminance is turned off. We don't want that on for that one. And this is the color map. So when I'm done with that, I click on that arrow, going back out again, so I got my color done. Now I'm going to go to metalness, click on the arrow key, make sure that's set to off, find this one, so I scroll down, number 17, right, 1017, metallic, click on that, it's black, that's okay, open, right, click on this and say UDIM Mari, generate, this needs to be raw. Okay, that's a metallic map, so it needs to be raw for color space. And I need alpha is luminance is check marked. Okay? Alright, so let's go back. We're all done with that one. So I got my base color. I got my metalness. Now we do roughness. So click on that. Make sure file type is off, filter type is off. And then find it. You can see it really comes in handy because I have this in my source images folder, and all my maps that I created in Substance Painter. It's all coming together now. 17, I did a metallic, and now we're doing roughness, right? 1017. Okay, roughness. Click on OK, open, and I click on Mari. I click on Generate Preview. I click on Color Space as Raw. I'm ignoring this down here. You see that's a warning. Just ignore that. It's a warning. It's telling me that my RGB UV my color space is not fitting within the rules that it chose. So I'm just ignoring it. Alpha is luminance is check marked. Okay, right? And did we generate? Sure. Click on generate, and then go back to just click on that box with the arrow out, and that brings us back out again. So we got our color, our metalness, and our roughness. And now our bump maps. Okay? Now this one's a little bit different because it's going to take you to this window. And it's going to say bump, and we want it to say tangent space normals. Okay? I'm going to click on this arrow. Okay, now it brings us to this one. So we got 2 steps on this one. Filter type off. We need to find the normal map. So go in here. 1017. It's easy to find. So normal map on that one, and there it is. So this is a normal map for that. Okay. And it needs to make sure it says PNG or whatever you saved it as. And then open it. Here we go. And generate. Okay. So Mari, right? That's important. Generate. And this is raw. This is the normal map, so that's going to be raw. But we want to make sure alpha is luminance is turned off. Okay? Alright, so let's take you through it again, and always click on Generate Preview. Let's go back out again. Alright, so let's kind of break this up, okay, kind of the way it is again. So the color map goes in the color channel, and I'm going to go in there. Filter type is off, and it's, UDIM is always selected. Generate, this is sRGB, and alpha is luminance is turned off. Let's go back out. Metalness, okay. The biggest main change is that it is a raw, okay, color space, and it is alpha is luminance is turned on. That's the major difference between all of them, okay. All right, so metalness has raw, and the alpha is luminance is turned on. Let's go back out, but everything else is the same. And then the roughness, same thing. This is a raw map, and this is alpha is luminous, and then make sure that everything else is the same, though, meaning that it is a different map. It's a roughness map, but you got filter type off, UDIM tiles, Mari, and you generate. Okay, so those are the main differences. Okay, now we're going to go back out. So we got base color, metalness, roughness, okay, and bump mapping. Again, same everything except that this one's raw and this one does not have alpha is luminance. Okay, so how do we explain that? Alright, so let's go back out again. Alright, so in a nutshell, the color map is sRGB, okay, color space, and it does not have color is luminance or whatever that is. Alpha is luminance, okay, it does not have that. Alright, so in metalness, it is a raw color space, and it does have check marked alpha is luminance. Roughness, same thing, raw, alpha is luminance, okay? And then here, under bump mapping, it's a normal map, so it is a raw file, but you have to uncheck alpha is luminance. Those are the main things you got to remember. Alright? Now, you have to do this for every single one. Okay? So here's that first one I did. Go to the next color. Okay? Go in here and find out what it corresponds. So 1002. And what I do is I go ahead and apply all those maps to that particular material. So that's a material. That's a material. You'll have to do that for every one of them. You can see that I did that. Every single one of them. Medium gray, blue screen, all the way across. Get them all in there. That takes time. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes depending on how fast you are. Okay, that's the end of it. Alright, so for that piece, right? So what I was done with everything and making sure that I went in here and made sure that this was taken care of. UDIM Mari and Generate Preview. And pretty soon, you'll notice that the Generate Preview goes away, meaning it's not red anymore. Okay? So, you still won't see your texture. You won't see it. Okay? So, let me give you kind of a heads up. If you do, it's a miracle come true, right? So, viewport, let's go into the option box. Let's help it along here. Okay? And what you want to do is you want to reload all textures. Alright? And then you want to generate all UV tile preview textures. Generate all UV tile preview textures. So let's say you save your entire scene after you've done all that work for that one little guy here. You don't have to do them for all of them. Okay? That's the beauty of all this. Okay? That's the beauty of all this. I'm going to click off. Click back on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the 6 key. Okay. Now that's the color. Okay. All right. It's going to take a while to generate all this stuff. All right. It's going to take a while. All right. There you go. And some of them will show up, some of them won't. It's just the weirdest thing you've ever seen in your entire life. It's just having a hard time handling the PBR textures and UDIM tiles and all that junk. So a lot of times I'll have to save and bring it back in and save and bring it back in before I see anything. Sometimes I don't see anything. Sometimes I bring it in, I don't see a thing. So if you save your work and you open your scene up again, you'll have to go instantly to panels, or excuse me, renderer, viewport 2, go into the option box, and automatically go in, regenerate all UV tile preview textures, and give it like a couple minutes. It might even take 5 minutes, I don't know. It takes a while for that to get all those maps set up. Okay? And look at that. Boom! All of a sudden, after doing that a couple times, bingo! Now it shows everything. It's so weird. So glitchy, so strange. But it sometimes I'm like astounded that it works. And then sometimes I'm like shaking my head going, why doesn't this work? This is crazy. So, yeah, welcome to Maya. Welcome to my world. Yeah, and this is what happens when you go back and go to renderer, viewport. I paused the video and I went back in here and just to see what would happen, I regenerated the tile textures and the preview textures, and look what happened. It took all the orange out of there. So I'll regenerate it a couple times, and then look what happens. You can see that it's still regenerating. And it's got some of the color back in there, but some of it's not. But I guarantee you, go ahead and close this and save your work. It's really important that once you get that work done, you'll have to do the any materials that you didn't catch through this one. So there's a couple. Let me show you what I mean. So with that one, I did that one because it had most of the textures on it. So I had the blue screen, the burnt orange, the dark gray, the door metal I did not have. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I got 6 of these because I had the pipes, but I didn't get the door metal or the floor. So I've got to select one of the floor pieces. Okay. Select one of the floor pieces, and I have to add the texture on there. So, and since I have 2 of them, because it's a 10 and 11, I ended up going with 11, okay, for it to show up properly. Okay, and I had to regenerate and do the whole thing that we did before. You'll have to do that with the doorway too as well. Okay. Even though it says the doorway is all set and ready to go, which is great, okay, because it generated it, it found the UDIM tile for that particular door. That's great. Sometimes you don't have to do anything, but you might have to manually go in there and add it, okay, and that's why it's really important you have this, okay. I've only got one texture map to pull from. It's 1009 on that one, okay. All right, so don't worry if you don't see it right. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Don't worry if you don't see it right. Okay, let me tell you why. Because the next step is going to be really important, that we want to see our texture now. So let's go into Arnold and click on the dome, the sky dome. Okay, we're going to turn the intensity down to 0.5 and the exposure to 0.5. Okay. And if we want to see our textures, then it's really important that we go in here and we go to panels, and we're going to go to, whoops, not panels, renderer, click on Arnold. Okay? Alright, so when you do that, it's going to convert all your textures to something it understands and will be able to show you in real time. Okay? Alright, that's pretty good. So I can rotate around and get a little closer, and it will start showing my textures in real time. Let's take a look at this, up a little bit closer. Here we go. And just let it go through its phases. Okay. So I get an idea of how it looks. Because I'm so close, it's going to take a while. It's like rendering it in real time. And when you're farther away, it does a better job. Alright, so basically you're finished, unless you see something that is horrible and you want to retexture it in Substance Painter, so you go back and forth, back and forth. It's really up to you how you want to go about doing that. But this is basically getting you to a point to be able to see your textures. And if you don't like that how the intensity of it, obviously we could do 0.25. I mean, it's pretty intense. And let's do 0.25 on that one too as well. And you can see that does help. Okay, it's so intense before. So whatever you prefer. Alright, so cool. So I can see all my textures on there. Everything's showing up properly on my floor panels too as well. Looks really good. So I'm really happy with that. Alright, so the next let's go ahead and turn that off. Even though you turn it off, it doesn't really turn off. So go into Renderer and go to Viewport again. And I would highly recommend that you save your scene, okay, that you have so far. And it's saving to my source images. That's weird. Okay, let's go back into my scenes. And let's go, I'm going to do 51 on here. There we go. Okay, so you got a big part done. This part was huge, getting all your textures to show up properly. If you have to go to each one of them and apply the textures to each one, that's what you'll have to do. But I would suggest just doing one, this one here, in fact, and then applying all the textures with one of them, and then going into Renderer, and then click on Reload Textures and Regenerate, or just regenerate all and then reload textures, and then click on that again. So those two. This one's the key right here. This one just reloads everything to make sure. But if everything's showing when you do that, don't click on this one, because it's going to reload all the textures again, but it doesn't really regenerate anything. So you have to, this is the key right here, regeneration. Regenerate all UV tile preview textures. Okay? Right. Make sure that you double check and make sure that you have UV tiling mode Udem Mari selected. So if you aren't seeing a texture, it's probably because of that. Okay? Or that you forgot that maybe metalness needs to have raw format and it needs to have the alpha luminance on. Okay? That's another thing you forget if textures aren't showing. Another thing, if textures aren't showing, you're not hitting the 6 key. The 6 key allows you to see textures. The 5 key, if I click on this, the 5 key is just basic shading. 6 key shows you textures. But just because you have 6 key on doesn't mean it's going to show anything. Okay? Like I told you, you may even just see that with your video card. But how do you know? The only way you're going to know is if you go into this mode, Renderer, Arnold, and it actually renders. You have to have a light in here. That means you have to have the sky dome in there. So go ahead and do Arnold and see if it shows. Make sure you have the sky dome though. Okay, you can see that if I go back, viewport, there's nothing there. Even with the 6 key, even with the 6 key on, you may not see it. Okay, I just wanted you to be prepared for that. Okay, all right. So don't get all discouraged if you're loading all the textures and it still looks like this. That doesn't mean anything. You have to just go into Renderer, Viewport, Option Box, and click on Generate, Regenerate all UV texture tiles. And if that doesn't work, then go from Renderer, Viewport to Arnold. One of those is going to work. Okay? Alright. Anyway, you guys know how to contact me if you have any questions or issues. And the next video will tackle pulling everything together and lighting everything. Alright, I'll see you there.